Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we're on a quest to find the best of fun, enjoyable, escapist books. We do book reviews of all kinds of genres, and today we are doing an action fantasy book called Monster Hunters International by Larry Correia. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this is the first of a series. I believe there's 8 books in this series, and he's written a bunch of others. So this is a pulpy, it feels like it should be sci-fi, but it's really fantasy, with all the monsters being classic, zombies and vampires and ghouls and demons and things like that. So they're not fighting aliens, but they're fighting them with guns. So it's an urban modern fantasy. And so the plot. What we have is our Mr. Owen, our main character, kind of encounters a monster and thus is ushered into the secret world of monster hunters. And their job is pretty clear cut. You go out and kill a bunch of monsters, all the evil things out there that are lurking, that have it in for humanity. And as you go along, he discovers a weird supernatural power, maybe, he gets visions from a ghost about some big bad that is coming to try and destroy the world. And so the monster hunters now have a larger quest to go and try and find and defeat the big bad before the end of the world. And that's pretty much the plot of the story. I mean, you can pretty much predict how this is going to go. If you want a book that has, fight after fight after fight after fight, this is pretty much what you're looking for. You're looking for a fantasy B action flick that's all about the battles, all about the big explosions and the car chases and the, hunt for and defeat in various ways critters. And a lot of variety. So that's one of the good things about this. One of the things I liked about this is there was a lot of variety of the enemy. So the way you fight a vampire, especially like a big, huge, big, bad, old vampire, is different than you would fight, say, an animated golem, which would be different than you would fight some sort of incorporeal thing. So the fights can have a lot of variation because that. It wasn't unrelenting either. The pacing in this book was good. You had several chapters of prep or, in between fights, and then you have maybe 2 chapters of serious, drag down, knockout, everybody gets injured kind of fight. And then a couple chapters in between, character, relationships, backstory, whatever. And then you go back to a major battle and so on and so forth. And so the pacing was good. It didn't end up feeling too monotonous. The author did a good job not making you get tired of the same old, same old. So they did a good job with that. The author very clearly knows his weapons and really likes them. I was thinking of this even before we got to the author's note in the back where the author is like, yes, I love guns, and he has a whole bunch of, he's a shooting instructor or something like that. So I don't personally know much about weapons at all. And, but reading it, I know this much. And because I know that much, I recognized that the author clearly knew a lot more. Not just because they were describing the weapons, but because one of the early chapters, somebody is handing a gun to somebody else, and they do it in such a way that, she clearly unloads it, pulls the action open, and then hands it to him, which is like proper hunter safety protocol there, which I thought was kind of interesting because in most movies or shows or whatever, if you're tossing somebody a gun, you basically like, here, have it, you don't check that it's unloaded, you don't properly make sure the action is open, any of that kind of thing in a typical book like this where you're all about the action. So the fact that it happened in that way, I was like, wait, I recognize that that's the proper protocol. Well, somebody actually knew what they were doing. I thought that was kind of funny. So I thought it was good. The action is well done. The pacing is well done. by the time you finish it, you feel like if you were looking for just this action, adrenaline rush book, this would be a good one to do. I will say that the humor, I liked the humor too. So it's not a constant laugh out loud, but they do a good job with the humor. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of this. The first one is the very first paragraph. I'm going to just do one paragraph right at the beginning on page 1. And I will say that there's some mild bad language in this and in previous stuff that I'm going to quote later. So, on one otherwise normal Tuesday evening, I had a chance to live the American dream. I was able to throw my incompetent jackass of a boss from a 14th story window. Okay, that is a pretty funny opening for a book. Living the dream. Okay, and I'm going to do another quote. Now this one's going to be a little bit longer, starting on page 360, and I'll read the whole page plus a couple of sentences on page 361. It's not laugh out loud funny, but it gives you a flavor for the humor in this. A horrible odor assailed my senses. My bandages were missing, and they were replaced by something foul. A green, tar-like substance was smeared all over my arms. It stunk of dead roadkill and body odor. I gagged reflexively as it hit my nostrils like a hammer. "Hey, something's going on," I bellowed at the top of my lungs. Considering the weirdness we dealt with in this business, I figured if you woke up to find yourself coated in strange secretions, it was probably best to alert your coworkers. Unlike most polite jobs, of course. Tripp burst into the bedroom, submachine gun at the ready, scanning for threats. He must have been right outside the door. "Something slimed me," I held up one goo-coated arm. "Dude, you just about gave me a heart attack." "What the hell is this?" I shook my arm, and some of the stuff splattered onto the sheets. We're probably going to have to burn them later. "Don't worry. Gretchen checked on you after she was done working on Julie. After she saw your injuries, she made that paste in the kitchen and came up here and smeared it on you. I guess it's supposed to be some sort of salve or something." "I didn't hear anything," I stated suspiciously. I could not believe that I'd slept through that, certainly not while sober. If you haven't noticed it, she kind of moves quiet." "What's in it? It smells terrible." "If I tell you, you're either going to puke or straight up shoot her, so I'm not saying anything. Just remember, she's supposed to be the healer. But according to my knowledge of chemistry, I can't think of a thing that's in it that's supposed to do anything other than reek." Okay, I'll pause there. So again, it's not super funny, but it's lighthearted. It's got that humorous overtone of people having I wouldn't say a fun time, but this was not a serious exchange. This is very humorous in tone, even if it's not a joke. Anyway, so the book has a lot of humor sprinkled through it, kind of like that, where people are, snarking at one another or at the situation or something like that. And it's good. I really like the humor. One last thing on my category before I move on to things I didn't like would be our main character. So you don't expect grand character exposition in something like this. You don't expect great overcoming development of the character or something like that. That would be on high literary. But the character's still likable. I like him. He's generally a good guy, not perfect, certainly. He has good character qualities. So one of the things that makes him good quality is he seems to have, all right, I'll give you an example. He has to get in the head of the bad guy to find out some, kind of like be part of his memories. And the bad guy does some nasty things. And when he comes back to himself, he's like, "Oh, that was awful. I don't want to be part of that." Or one thing, the bad guy was about to do something nasty in a memory, and he yanks himself out of it. He doesn't want to be part of that. That's the kind of character quality. He's not really out for power or money, or he's given several opportunities of temptation, Like one of the vampires is like, I can grant you immortality and everything you ever wanted and the girl of your dreams and everything, just join me. And he's like, no thanks. So he makes good choices throughout this, with an exception that I'll get into in the dislike. But for the most part, he's a likable guy that you root for him. So the characters in this were pretty good. There's several other side characters that are all kind of interesting. They give, again, very shallow, but you like them. And if and maybe when, I'm not going to give away one way or the other, if any of them die, you would be sad, not like, it wouldn't be a tearjerker, but you'd be like, oh, that's a bummer, I kind of like that character. That would be basically a response. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that as far as characters go. And then, okay, things I didn't like. There's not a huge amount to say about this, except for some big ones, the biggest one being the gore. Okay, obviously this is an action book, and they're killing monsters left and right, so there's ichor flying, and, people oozing, and all sorts of bodily secretions, and, you can imagine, somebody's doing that. This would be definitely a rated R movie as far as the level of guts and blood and everything spraying everywhere. So I kind of debated on whether to read one more chapter about that or one more section, and I think I will. So this is an example of the gore, and if you can't handle this, skip ahead a minute or something like that, because it's just going to be one paragraph on page 97, but it gives you an example of the level of gore. This is about as bad as it gets. So if you could handle reading this kind of thing, then the rest of the book would be fine. But here's an example. Sawing off a human head is harder than it looks. The body tends to flop around every time you hit it, and it makes a really nasty mess. Once goo gets on the handle of your knife, it gets even worse, and the next thing you know, your blade is glancing off the bones that you didn't even know were there. I grunted as I strained the blade against the rubbery flesh. Okay, so that gives you an idea. He's practicing on cadavers there. So that gives you an idea. So it's definitely got some gore in it. If you can't handle the gore, don't read this book. The second thing would have to do with the romance. So this is very light on the romance. There's nothing explicit. The strongest you get is a kiss, and some fade to black where a couple of people go around the corner and you know what happens, but there's not even any text about it. But the romance still, I think, needs a warning, because our main character is a little bit pushy. Not to the point that it's like stalkery bad, like I wouldn't give a warning to that extent, but the girl repeatedly is basically like friend zoning him. Like, I am with somebody else, no thank you, I'm not interested, and he keeps kind of drooling after her. Like, he doesn't even try to not. I mean, the kind of thing that, they're in the same room and he's kind of like, so what are you doing next Tuesday? That kind of thing, after she's repeatedly said, no thank you. And to me, that was a little bit too pushy, I think, than in real life somebody should act. Now, this is a fiction book and it all turns out okay and he didn't mean any harm and, they get together at the end kind of thing. But I didn't really like how pushy he was about that. He should have backed off when she said no thank you. So it's a cause for a little bit of warning. I didn't love that aspect of it. Okay, overall though, I highly recommend it if you are into action books. It would be fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a blast. The kind of thing that somebody who's interested in B action movies, the author says he really likes B horror movies. This was not horror, but it has a lot of that vibe of a B horror, an 80s action flick maybe. So I recommend it. I'm gonna put it on my list, 2 thumbs up. And now on to part 2. What I'm gonna read next is a science fiction. I'm gonna do Hail Mary by Andy, I think it's pronounced Weir. I think that's Weir. I have read, he did The Martian, and I watched the movie and read the book and really liked it. I think I liked I don't know if I would say I liked The Martian book better than I liked the movie, but it was different in some areas. I liked some parts of the movie, some parts of the book. Anyway, since this is the same author, I think I will really enjoy Hail Mary. So that is going to be our next book. I hope that you would join us for that. Thank you for watching.